President Obama is warning Russia against a military intervention in Ukraine. Here's what he had to say about it late yesterday.
It would be a clear violation of Russia's commitment to respect the independence and sovereignty and borders of Ukraine and of international laws. And just days after the world came to Russia for the Olympic Games, it would invite the condemnation of nations around the world. And indeed, the United States will stand with the international community in affirming that there will be costs for any military intervention in Ukraine.
Echoes of the Cold War there. Let's talk it over with Juan Zurate, CBS News national security analyst, who joins us from our Washington bureau. Good morning, Juan.
Good morning, Anthony and Benita.
Juan, the thing that strikes me here is that, as Clarissa mentioned, with the very large Russian population in Crimea and, of course, a Russian military base on the Black Sea there, if President Putin wanted to find a reason to intervene in Ukraine, he probably could.
I think that's right, and I think that's why the president had to step out yesterday to send a warning shot out there and also a message of support to the Ukrainians and the new prime minister in Kiev. And so you're absolutely right. The Russians are postured very well here in terms of Crimea. And as you heard Clarissa talk about the pretext, really allowing for the Russians to say, look, we are simply responding to pleas for protection and support in Crimea. This is a pattern we've seen in the past with Russia, certainly with Georgia and Moldova. And I think you've got a real chance here of secession in Crimea with Russian support or prompting.
You know, after hearing the president speak yesterday, it is hard not to see some similarities between this situation and what's happening in Syria. When he mentions the word costs, what exactly is he referencing?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Vanita, because the word costs were not the same as consequences, and he certainly did not use one of his signature lines of, let me be clear, there will be costs. He sort of couched it a bit more. He wanted to avoid, I think, the red line language that got him into a bit of trouble in the Syrian context. But I think his credibility, American credibility, is a little bit shaken, given that we did not respond in the Syrian context. And so the question is, what could we do if the Russians responded? We could respond with some sanctions, certainly diplomatic isolation. The president's already signaling that he may not attend the G8 meeting in Sochi. We've got the Paralympics coming up, so maybe a boycott of the Paralympics in Sochi. But I can't imagine that you would hear the president say that we'd put troops on the ground or respond militarily.
So that doesn't sound like a threat that would dissuade Putin, you know, if he wants to go in.
No, Anthony, the Russians play for keeps, and we've seen that with Putin before. We've seen that with the Russians in Georgia in 2008 when they invaded. Certainly, they've got troops still in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. These are neighboring regions close to Sochi, where the Olympics were held. And so the Russians are not going to be dissuaded with speeches. If they have interests, and they do here with the Black Sea Fleet based in Crimea, and they've got a population that they want to defend, they're going to find either a pretext or a prompt to get in there and to serve their interests.
Juan Zurate in Washington this morning. Thank you.